Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here, Golden Opportunities Coaching YouTube channel, and welcome to those of you who are new. If you're new around here, please like, subscribe, comment below. If there's an audio you'd like to hear or that would be helpful to you, please comment that as well. We'll be glad to get one of those done for you, usually within a couple of days. Today, we're going to talk about the increase in mental illness and the reasons for it, or the reasons for the increase in the prominence of mental illness. You know, it's really interesting. In 13 years of coaching, 16 years if I count the volunteer work I've done, I will say that the number of people who, even in that shortest time period, have a diagnosed DSM-related mental or emotional or mood disorder has probably gone up by at least 25% over when I started. And there's a lot to do with that. There's a lot of reasons behind that. Just as a caveat, if you're new here, this audio may offend you if you are the type to only believe the mainstream opinion on issues. If that's you, or if you're a person who predominantly believes the mainstream and doesn't look for other options, I'll just say this audio may offend you, and I apologize in advance for that. But so what's the reason, in my experience, that things have increased that much in the last, let's say, decade and a half plus? There's four basic reasons. Number one, the focus on mental health, mental awareness, emotional stability, emotional maturity, and all of those things has greatly increased in society, both online and offline. There are support groups for everything now if you want to look for it. There are new definitions, diagnoses, subgroups, social groups popping up almost on a weekly to monthly basis. And so if we get to the point where we label everything, right, then sooner or later someone's going to have a label for something. If I am a person who doesn't like loud noises, I'm sure there's a subgroup of people somewhere in an online community who can relate that to why they have difficulty in relationships. If you really want to correlate this, I experienced this, therefore why, more than ever before due to the global nature of the internet and the prevalence of things like Reddit and Facebook and other social media outlets, and therefore communities in those outlets. I think that's a big thing. And because there's such focus on it, there's also this tribal mentality of defining oneself by the definition of, oh, I have depression, or I have an eating disorder, or I have PTSD, or I have issues with authority, or whatever it is. Now, that's both good and bad, and it's hard for people to see that because usually it starts with, well, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling ostracized, I'm feeling uncomfortable, so let me go and find a group of people that think, feel, or emote the way I do. And that's wonderful if you use it for support in your own recovery. However, there is a phenomenon where people use social groups of this nature to kind of stop their own recovery process, or stop growing, stop pushing forward to look at things in a new way. And I've seen this, oh, well, this person says in my depression support group, or this person says in my anxiety message board. And then it's like, okay, they're like me, therefore there's nothing wrong with me, therefore I don't need to change. And it's like, well, no, you don't need to change if you're comfortable with the quality of your life. But if the thing that originally caused you to reach out for help hasn't changed, and the only thing that's changed is your view of it, and or having other people who view the world the way you do, it's kind of foolish. I mean, there's subgroups for everything, right? So if I wanted to find a group of, and I'm going to use an extreme example, if I wanted to find a group of racist individuals, I'm sure I could go online and do that, right? But at the same time, that doesn't mean that racism is correct, does it? That doesn't mean if I wanted to find people that believed that the degradation of our society is because of the absence of gender roles, I'm sure I could go and find such a group. But that doesn't mean that the viewpoint is right. So the idea of emotional and mental illness being more of a focus also means that there are groups for people to reach out. And that kind of weasels into social media as well as television. Because more people are being outspoken about what they're going through mentally and emotionally and all these things, and that's wonderful because I think people need to own their truth, whatever it is. If you are dealing with a sexual identity issue, or if you're dealing with a minimalist versus materialist issue, or whatever issue you're dealing with, just own it. Just be you. Whomever that is, be you. I think one of the biggest challenges I see is there's a bunch of people who have a lot of unchanneled rage, anger, hurt, pain, and then they go out and they hurt others. We wonder why there's been a rise in things like global shootings and suicides and teen pregnancy and all these things. And it's really not as complicated as everybody likes to make it out to be, at least in my experience. The reason this happens is because at the end of the day, people are trying to kill their pain. And so if they think that by getting attention or focus on themselves, they will kill their pain, they're going to go do something to get that attention, to get that fix. There's a YouTuber who has a prison series that I watch on a regular basis because I really like the fact that he turned his life around, and so he's been in and out of jail several times, and he did a lot of bad stuff, but he got out and got married and had children, and he's turned his life around, and it's really cool. But he had this story less than a week ago about this guy in the Midwest somewhere. I don't remember what state it was, but the guy went and he streamed online or with his phone or whatever, with his device, being chased by the cops. And then the cops, I guess, thought they were in danger, and they shot the guy, killed the guy. Guy is now dead, right? Like, he's not coming back. So that search for acceptance led to someone losing their life. It happens. And I think there's that group mentality of, oh, if someone's like me, then I can find that tribe, and therefore I can play to or give attention to that tribe. The third thing is there are more labels than ever before. I mean, if you look at the mindset of, and if you've never watched Making a Killing, Making a Killing is a documentary on kind of the fallacies of the pseudoscience, psychology, psychiatry field, and although it's very it's skewed towards that whole field being a scam. I mean, that's the underlying belief of the premise of the documentary. So obviously it may not be for everybody. But if you go in and you take the good parts from it, one of the things that they talk about is in the 1960s, there were something like a few dozen mental illness diagnoses. And now there's literally hundreds. So in, let's call it 60 years. In 60 years, we've 1,000 times the number of diagnoses, which means, in theory, two things. There's something wrong with everyone, and there's very little right with anyone. Because the more we label people as having this or that, the more we also say, oh, well, you're an outsider because, you're divided because. Whereas my philosophy in the 23 years of study I've done and 16 years of professional work I've done is there's no such thing as right or wrong with somebody. There's just progressive or destructive. Is this helping you move forward and doing no harm? Or is this causing you to destroy either yourself or somebody else? If we go in the direction of the progress versus destruction mentality, what we really get to is actual freedom, actualized freedom. Less group thinking, more individualized thinking, Yes, we're part of a culture. Yes, we're part of communities, societies, countries, neighborhoods, and all of these things. But at the end of the day, if we believe that every person is born for a reason, and we believe that we are individuals with individual experiences, then there's no two people that are ever going to experience the same thing the same way. But the more we label and try to quantify the nature of a person's condition, the more we take away that individuality. And the last thing for this particular audio, we live in the now culture, right? So if we go back, and it's my belief that the culture started to erode um, approximately 40 years ago. So the late 70s, early 80s is my belief of when the Western culture truly started to erode towards being more me centralized, me focused, and more instant gratification focused. And it's only gotten worse over time. And now more than ever, if we look at, um, I was talking to a young client the other day, and when I say young, I'm talking early 20s, and she was laughing at me because I mentioned VCRs and the need to rewind tapes. And she goes, "You mean like you had to actually sit there and wait for something to be finished rewinding?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, that's stupid." And I said, "But that's the way it was then." And it's not stupid nor smart, it's just different frame of culture. But we now live in an instantaneous culture, right? Like, there was a point where you had to go to the library and read a book and carve out time and go do research and use a card catalog and all these things in order to do a research paper. Now, literally, you can have the structure of a research paper in less than 15 minutes with your cell phone or otherwise online connected device. So we live in a now culture. There's no reason to wait. There's no desire to wait. And that leads to an increase in definition of mental or emotional instability, because if I don't get it right away, I feel sad, I feel anxious, I feel angry, I feel whatever negative emotion I want to ascribe to something, which means there's no reason to, for lots of people anyway, learn patience. I see this especially with people in dating groups. I've actually had people say to me, what does he or she think of me? Will we get married? And they're saying this after the first or second date. And I'm like, you don't even know if this person's compatible with your needs portfolio. You don't even know whether this person has a dead body in the trunk of their car. You know nothing about this person, but you're jumping months, if not years, of relational development to try to fill a void within yourself. And that happens in career too. And I've seen it happen with children, in the sense of the need to have children versus not have children. There are groups of people in the world who would be better off if they don't procreate, but automatically, when a person gets engaged or they get married or whatever the case is for their relationship status, there's a segment of the population, somewhere between 60 to 80%, that thinks automatically that means we must procreate. And that's a leftover thing. So the now culture doesn't exactly teach penance. It doesn't teach planning. It teaches reactiveness instead of stick-to-itiveness. And that creates a lot of perception of illness where there doesn't necessarily have to be. Anyway, those are the 4 things that I wanted to touch on. Comment below. What do you think is causing the rise in mental and emotional instability in folks worldwide? I'd love to hear or read your input. Anyway, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.